Hello, friends. Welcome to Leaders on Tap, where today I am super excited to be speaking with Greg Baseman, the founder and CEO of BUCS Engineering. In our conversation, we start with Greg's confession that as a young man, he loved Jesus, but he just loved his sin more. How his leadership was most formed by a moment when a boss that he really respected told him he's not that great of a leader. And the point in his journey as a young business owner when he realized, I'm not that guy, but I am Greg, and how that changed the way he approaches how he leads. So I think you're going to be struck by Greg's deep humility paired with this deep conviction. So I invite you to watch, I invite you to share, and I pray that this would be a blessing to your life and leadership. Greg, welcome. So excited to have you on Leaders on Tap. From the point that you and I first spoke, I was just struck by the way that you opened that conversation, just with great humility in the story of what God's done in your life and leadership. So we're going to talk about your business and your leadership and so forth. But first, tell us, who is Greg?
Sure. So I own and operate BUCS Engineering, and that's kind of my fourth child, I would say. My wife, Stephanie, and then three kids who are 6, 4, and 1. And we've got a full and chaotic household because of all the things we've got going on. And we're both Stephanie and I, my wife, are trying to lead our family well, trying to go forward with God at the center of everything. And that includes, obviously, family life, where it's easiest to really kind of portray that, but also in our business, which isn't as easy to do because you think of business more in the secular world, which is just about making money, hitting profit targets, hitting revenue targets. And I'm trying to lead my family differently and my business differently to really follow and pursue God in every area that I can.
I love it. I look forward to kind of hearing more about each of those areas. But tell me, who were some of the influential people or moments in your life that kind of brought you to this point and those convictions?
Sure. I grew up in a Christian household. I felt that my mom was really geared toward Jesus and putting us on a good track toward following him. My dad, I don't really know where he stands, but he was a great dad. He still is a great dad. He still leads me well. And he's more quiet, which I get some of my quiet, reserved nature from him. And my mom is more loud and outgoing, and I kind of get a mixture of both of them in my personality. And it was a great household to live in. We grew up in Carroll County, obviously a more rural community, more conservative community, which I kind of geared toward. But
so your mom, so you were kind of always in the church and of the faith. Yeah. Was there any point where you had to make your faith your own?
Absolutely. I would say during college, I was probably the prodigal son, the prodigal child for sure. I was pursuing things that I shouldn't be, drinking, not drugs, but drinking, partying, that kind of lifestyle. I was in a fraternity. Yeah. So I'm sure many could have the perception of what that fraternity guy was. I probably was that. It was a lot of fun.
The stereotype?
Yeah, the stereotypical fraternity guy. I was that guy.
Not quite John Belushi.
Not quite that funny. I definitely was not that funny. But that was me. And I was enjoying college. It was really fun. And I think as we just exited college, things got more serious. I was really drawn toward Christian apologetics and following Jesus in a way that was far more than just this wishy-washy faith, but really something that was grounded in truth, something that was really grounded in evidentiary things, so that we could learn about, okay, there's these things in science, there's these things in history, archaeology, biblical hermeneutics, and stuff, the like of that, and that's what I started really getting into, and I really was able to anchor my faith a lot more in that. And just exiting college, getting more into following Jesus that way. My mind works better that way, following those evidences and not necessarily, I keep saying wishy-washy, but it's really not that, but just like the emotional aspect of faith, I don't really relate to that as much as I do the other side of it.
You tell me if your theology is different, but I believe we, especially as leaders, we can create opportunities for people to bump into God. We can surround them with biblical values and so forth. We can love them like Jesus. Ultimately, though, people's coming to Christ is a conviction, a matter of the heart,
Yeah.
and a matter of the Holy Spirit. So, as somebody who maybe is a little bit more left brain and logical, is that safe to say?
Sure.
Is that fair?
Sure. Yeah.
How has, along those lines, how has your immersing yourself in apologetics helped you in terms of being able to speak into the cultural realities that we're living in right now? Is it equipping?
Yeah. And it's learning how to think too.
Mm.
I don't know if people, especially in my age group and younger, I think learn how to think. Because when you engage and you see a lot of this discourse online, that are people, Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is, you see a lot of genetic fallacies where it's like, someone said this particular piece of information, I'm not going to believe it just because I don't like their viewpoint that they're coming from.
Yeah.
That doesn't engage with the argument itself, which is what you need to do. Just ad hominem attacks of attacking people just because they can't engage with the argument. And it's learning how to think and then engaging with the world around you and understanding it in that way. And it applies to many things, which is business and relationships. Just learning how to think and think well is important.
Any earthly heroes or mentors there? My brother-in-law says, I've got paper mentors. Do you have any, like a Lee Strobel?
Okay.
Anybody like that?
I do. I think the first Christian apologist that I was exposed to, his name is Greg Kokel. He leads an organization called Stand to Reason. And one of his little taglines is put a stone in someone's shoe. When you're walking down the street and you can feel that stone in your shoe and you're like, dude, this is annoying. Get out. You take the shoe off, you shake it out and you get it out of there. And with talking about Jesus, with talking about faith, and with people who don't necessarily have faith, it's about leaving that stone in their shoe that just kind of bothers them. That just sticks with them.
Do you think putting a stone in the shoe of Christians is ever fair or helpful?
Absolutely. We can go wayward too. I mean, I'm probably guilty of that.
I will tell you, I live downtown, Frederick, and there's a real movement around, with the church, around spiritualism, inclusive of Jesus, but when you really drill down to it, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
We're a fan.
Yeah.
You made me think, when you talked about the pebble, I was like, I feel like that's where sometimes a stone is needed. You know?
Absolutely. And I think it also goes back to C.S. Lewis, where he says, where maybe I don't agree with those people downtown, where C.S. Lewis says Jesus is either God of the universe or a crazy man. Yeah. Essentially is what that comes down to, because his views are so outrageous and out there that you either have to believe one or the other about Jesus. Yeah. He's not just riding the third rail of a good person.
Yeah. Like he asked of the disciples, who do you say I am, right? Yeah. But who do you say I am? Yeah.
And we shouldn't ride that third rail either. We probably need to be on either side of it.
My experience, especially with busy business leaders, is they want to be equipped, but they have succumbed to what Dallas Willard and others would say is the enemy's number one tool, and that's busyness. Yeah. What would you suggest for somebody who is intrigued by apologetics, but maybe feels overwhelmed by that?
I think you can talk about apologetics as maybe a separate topic, but it's really not. It's learning how to defend the faith. I mean, if someone comes up to you on the street and asks you, why do you believe in Jesus? Why is this guy that we talk about in the Bible, how do you know he's true? How do you know he existed? How do you know creation is real? Yeah. The first miracle, how do you even know that happened? I think it's just part of your faith journey that you need to kind of take on from the beginning. And reading your Bible well, reading the Bible within context is part of apologetics also. So it's really a part of the larger faith journey that I think people should go on.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing you say too is just starting with a good question. Yeah. And then looking to God's word and being receptive to the Holy Spirit as you're reading through that. That's good. I love it. I also sense that maybe you're getting into apologetics. You sound like a guy who, when you get into something, maybe you go deep, you're all in.
Sometimes.
Is that fair to say?
Sometimes. I think when it really matters, for sure. Okay. Apologetics it just suited my way of thinking. It just suited my personality. Yeah. And so that's what caused me to dig into it. But I dig into bigger things and some of the smaller ideas, they're hard for me to keep focused on. But the big picture things, I
Mhm,
think
mhm.
you're right. I could dig into some big picture things deeply.
It's funny because when I feel like God kind of put this idea for leaders on tap on my heart. It was very much meeting people where they're at, not necessarily jumping into the deep end of the spiritual pool.
Hmm.
Um, I'm surprised how many of these conversations have been wonderfully rich from a spiritual standpoint, and I'm not gonna
Yeah.
far be it from me to stop that. Before we start talking about business, I want to ask, with regard to your family, your apologetics background and foundation, how are you trying to be intentional in both your marriage and with your children based on your faith upbringing, right? Like what you experienced and where you're at now.
Yeah. Especially with little kids, and then we can touch on my wife later. But with little kids, it's starting small.
Yeah.
It's simple things like just saying grace when you're sitting down for dinner
Hmm.
and being together and
Yeah.
saying that grace together, and thanking God for the things that are going on in your day, talking to Jesus about what happened today, what I'm happy about, what I'm sad about.
Hmm.
Just modeling those sorts of things for your kids can
Yeah.
start really small, and it makes a huge bit of difference. We had some family over recently, and my son Grant, who is 4, he prayed for his aunt, and she just was just so touched by
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and me too, because it's amazing to
Sure.
see
Sure.
that little 4-year-old just exhibit that faith and talking to God. It's really cool. And then both my wife and I, it's just we when we can, with 3 kids, it's tough to find that intentional space
Yeah.
together and
Yeah.
to just talk about anything.
Yep.
Um, we just try to connect and really root our relationship, root our marriage, root our family and life around Jesus. And because if we did not do that, we would just be so wayward in terms of the
Hmm.
busyness of our lives and
Hmm.
kids and business and everything, soccer games, all the things.
Yeah. I get it. I get it. So outside of church, which you've told me about, your kids, go to a private Christian
Yes.
school, and grace and some of those traditions and practices, I should say. What are some of the other spiritual disciplines that you hope your kids and your wife see in you?
I hope that they see a strong and courageous man who goes out into a world that is unkind to folks like us following Jesus, and we treat others the way Jesus would want us to treat them, which is speaking in the moment to that person who needs it, but is also seasoned with salt
Yeah.
and has that truth in their speech. I hope that they would see that about me,
Hmm.
that I would be brave and bold in the message that I have to give, um, and not shrink back from a challenge.
Yeah. There's an expression that I don't know, I imagine you've probably heard, but certainly in hindsight, now I see it with adult children. That is, your kids are, what your kids take away is more caught than told,
Mm. Yeah,
you know?
yeah, it's
So
true.
to your point,
That's true.
they are watching for sure.
You've got to be disciplined. You've got to be patient. Your temperament has to stay cool and calm. And
Yeah.
it's difficult even when your kids are fighting, especially at the ages that they are. It's it's so difficult to just maintain that patience and discipline and not shout, or
Right.
not just like, oh, come on, kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
To
know?
come at it from the right place,
Yeah,
right?
right. Yeah.
Right. Um,
So I fail too,
oh,
often.
come on, brother. Yeah. Good for you
Often.
for sharing that. So, how, were, have you always been a leader, or is that
No,
something you've had to nurture?
it's something that I've had to nurture. Um, I've always wanted to be a leader. I've always felt like it was within me. Um, but it was definitely something I had to nurture throughout in the business world. Um, you just got to learn to be a follower first, and I'm a pretty good follower. And I think that that's a really good foundation for being a leader, because you have to learn how to be a leader. Often you just don't walk off the bus knowing those skills. Um, so I'm really good at following good leaders. And early in my career, I was a level 1 leader, who was just someone who was a leader in title only. And you've got to learn to break through and actually get some skills in leadership, and not just have people follow you for your title, but people follow you because of your influence and your ability to lead them.
So share that story, because there was someone early in your career, right, who helped you realize that.
Yeah, and I mean, really, it was sort of recent. It was probably 6, 7 years ago. I was a vice president of an engineering firm, of a larger firm that did telecommunications work. And we were struggling within the business. We were struggling because of COVID. And he pretty much said to me one day, he's like, I don't trust your leadership. You're not being a very good leader.
Mm.
And to hear that, especially from the prideful position that I was in, it was tough.
Yeah.
It's a blow to what you think you are, who you think you are, what you think you're capable of.
How did you receive it in the moment? And, how did it change your life?
I think in the moment it was more, I'm open to that feedback, although it hurt, but I'm open to the feedback. And really, it's just a challenge that you've got to be better. You've got to learn more. You've got to do more and be better at that. And you can't hear that sort of feedback and just kind of push it away because you're not going to grow. You've got to take that feedback. You've got to evolve. You've got to grow into that and be like, okay, what am I doing to be a good leader? You've got to learn what a good leader is. What am I doing wrong? And thankfully, I still had some more years with this leader that told me that, and I had some more experience with him, and I learned a ton from him. And
how did your leadership change? Do you recall anything, attributes?
I think one of the things that's really difficult for me is confrontation and confrontational conversations. Making some decisions about people and their livelihoods that are going to break the relationship. Even if it's in a professional sense, there's still that personal touch that you have with many people that you work with. And it's really hard for me to have those confrontational conversations with people. Still.
Have you learned any tricks or approaches to that? Any reframing?
Not really in reframing, just walking forward in boldness and just doing it sometimes, because when you know in your gut that you just need to make a decision or make a move with someone, you've got more obligations than just to yourself, especially as a business owner now. Because there's so much more on the line and at stake, especially as the owner. So I think in those other prior circumstances where I did not have that, and maybe this is a deficiency in my leadership at the time, where I did not have that ownership perspective, which is really hard to generate in your employees. When you don't have that perspective, it's easier to push away those conversations because you're like, it's not my problem, not my business. Someone else is going to figure it out. But when you are the person at the top and you have your families relying on you, your other employees are relying on you, the well-being of the business, the consistency, the endurance of the business is dependent upon you having that conversation.
If you really pull that thread, which I'm sure you have at some point, what's behind that? Your inability to have those tough conversations.
My dad was not a great communicator, so I think it does kind of have that root in some of the nature that I observed just growing up.
No people-pleasing tendencies? That's not part of it?
No, I'm definitely not a people pleaser. I am sort of disagreeable, but it's still hard to have those conversations for me.
There is a lady that I work with who is probably 67 now. She has 400 employees.
Wow.
And I have never met, she invited me to one of her banquets where they were celebrating their employees. And I have never met somebody who can give tough love and their employees are like, thank you. And it makes, I can't remember if it's radical candor or crucial conversations where there's that 2x2 and she's like up in that upper right-hand box.
She's really good at it.
She's high love, high candor and high care, both of those. And she has an expression when she has to part ways with an employee, a mindset that I'm going to botch this, but basically like I'm going to lovingly help them out the door based on, their own situation, and she really sees it as part of her ministry to do that well. So I do think there's a reframing there, to be had. And I know a lot of Christian leaders struggle with that. We can intellectually understand principles of accountability and justice and what it means to live up to our potential and still be like, oh man, I'll just let it go, right? I got 100 other things I got to seem more important. So then in 2020 you started your business?
2021.
2021?
Yep.
Yep. How'd that
That's
come
right.
to be?
It came to be. I was at the same firm with the individuals like, you're a crappy leader. We were not doing well. We had built the business up to a point where we had two great customers and some smaller ones, but two primary main customers. And then as a result of COVID, one of those customers just completely turned off the spending. So pretty much 50% of our business was gone, just like immediately.
Wow.
And obviously we had employees, we had staff, we had equipment, and had to cut many of them, which is a really, really difficult circumstance, especially for me. It's one of the first times I'd ever gone into a large RIF.
Yeah.
And we just continued our downward spiral, unfortunately. Probably some of my fault, but I think truly, candidly, not a lot of it was. It was just the circumstances of the environment that we were in. COVID just decimated us.
And share what you do.
Yeah, so I provide, I'm a professional engineer. So I'm a civil engineer at heart. I love engineering. I'm not the engineer that does things on computers, but actually build things, build real things that you can touch. And I primarily specialize in fiber optics, telecommunications. So we support a lot of the hyperscalers who are building fiber optic cables to link up data centers. High count fiber optic cables, fiber companies, cable companies, and we provide a lot of the foundational infrastructure that runs today's internet. We engineer it and permit it, and we do it really, really well.
So your previous employer, did they fully go out of business? Did you acquire their assets?
No,
how did that happen?
They did not fully go out of business. So it was, I think, the summer of 2021. We were just really at the point where we were just floundering, just not doing well. The entire engineering business was not doing well. And the leader was just like, in the summertime, I remember I was at Ocean City. I was on vacation. He was like, hey, man, sorry to do this, but we're just closing down the business.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah. And you kind of see it coming, sort of. It's almost like that.
You weren't super surprised?
That car crash is just like, this is probably coming at some point. It's either going to be, I'm going to get fired, I'm going to get fired, and everyone's going to get laid off, or they're just going to shut the whole thing down and just wipe their hands of it, which is what they did. They closed down the entire engineering business, which was both our wireless and wireline engineering groups. I had a counterpart in Florida. She was unfortunately, her whole group was let go same time. Or actually, I think it was like a month or two afterward they made that decision on their group. And but they were just walking away from engineering entirely. And it gave me the opportunity, I think by God's grace, like, here's your opportunity, man. We're going to give you severance. You're out of your non-competes. You're out of your non-disclosures. Like they just didn't care about the engineering work. They didn't care about the customers. To them, it was just nothing. But to me is what I love to do. It's the environment that I grew up in, the experience that I have. And my wife was working at the time, and financially we were in a good position to just be able to take a chance.
Yeah.
So for the final quarter of the year, I had some customers, and I made $50,000 in revenue in the final quarter of the year. And I thought to myself, man, if I just did this every quarter,
that's a good start.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't need to do anything else. This is great. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And just started out by myself, a solo entrepreneur, or solopreneur, if you mash the words together, right?
Yeah. Do you consider yourself an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I guess I have to be. I created the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself a visionary? Are you constantly thinking of new ideas and where the company might go?
Which is actually weird because I didn't expect myself to be that. But I've become that, and actually so much so that it becomes kind of a distraction for me because I have so many things, and I will go maybe not so deep, but deep on one thing, and my attention will be drawn by something else.
Yeah.
And I don't finish that thing, and then I'm on to the next thing. So I struggle with that a bit. But
do you know Patrick Lencioni?
I do.
You ever read his work?
I have.
So I was
probably not everything, but I have.
Yeah, good stuff, right?
Yeah.
5 dysfunctions of a team, the advantage for our listeners, all that. I was together with him for a gathering in San Antonio last week, and he was sharing with us kind of in the kitchen a new product that he's working on. And we've gotten to know him a little bit through our work and kind of partnering with him. And he's a very open and honest guy. And he was open enough to confess some things about how he's thinking about his faith and work. He's a Catholic, but also that he has that same syndrome, that literally he has to have a team around him. He says he will barely get through a book and a lot of times he's got frameworks behind those
Yeah.
books. He'll barely get through that. And like they're not even off to the presses yet. And like his head's off to the next
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely a struggle.
Yeah.
And so in his own personality test, he's not a finisher, I guess.
That's right.
And I guess neither am I.
Well, I think in the Working Genius, he said he's an inventor, which
okay,
is,
yeah.
if you've ever taken that, yeah.
And that's what I am. I forget my other one. but
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
So it sounds like maybe initially you're just like, hey, I'm going to do this thing. I'll be more of a consultant and provide for my family. And then
Yeah.
you got enough business, you started hiring employees.
Yeah.
Was that your vision right out of the gates to have a team?
I hoped that it would turn into
Okay.
something like that. I had no idea what God's plans were. I just knew that in this moment I had to at least give it a try. If I didn't do it, I would have looked back and been like, I would have regretted not trying to at least start the business. I mean, the foundation, the seed for that was there.
Yeah.
There was no reason not to.
How and where did your faith come into play there as you were taking that leap?
Yeah. I just had to trust God the whole way. I had to trust him I would win work, I would win customers, I would win opportunities, I would lead well, which was a huge challenge and a leap for me at that point in time because I had not performed at that prior. I just had to trust him that he was going to give me those opportunities and walk me through. And with the failure that I had seen, which I didn't see at the time, but with the failure that I had endured and walked through and persevered through, sometimes well, sometimes not, I had some of the framework and the foundational aspects in me that he was growing that I had not noticed at that point in time.
Come on.
But that over the following years that I finally saw just the fruit of those struggles, those broken relationships, the fruit of the bad decisions and stuff that I had done, the fruit of that was really growing.
Mhm.
So the manure of all that crap
Yeah, yeah.
was just finally growing a plant, which was the business. And customers were coming that I'd never had before. Relationships that I'd built in the past were coming to me for work. And also we walked into an environment outside of COVID where fiber to the home was an extremely beneficial and crucial infrastructure that people were seeing. And now walking into AI, this is the golden age of building telecom.
Mm-hmm.
Walking into an environment that I never could have influenced that. But obviously God had built all of that, drugged me through it to now this point where the world economies are coming into like fruition to kind of meet my experience, my brokenness, my failures, and what I had built. And it's just, it's just continuing to meet, and I could not
A little
have
overwhelming?
manufactured that. No,
Yeah.
it's
You said something, Greg, to me that I will not forget. You said, I am not that guy. There was a turning point in your leadership where you said, I am not that guy. I'm Greg.
Yeah. This was probably, I guess it was a company and a half ago, we'll just say. There was a great leader who I was following, but he's that excellent salesman.
Uh-huh.
He is that guy who could relate to you on the street in an instant.
Mm-hmm.
He knows you, knows everything about you, could make you laugh, could make you just, your
Yep.
buddy immediately. And I'm just not that person. I'm not that person. But my perspective of him and the engineering world in general, was just that in order to move up and advance, make money, add titles, responsibility, all that stuff,
Yeah.
you had to be a great salesman.
Mm-hmm.
And my perspective or what I thought was a great salesman was him.
Right.
This guy who could just be friends with anyone. And I'm a little bit more introverted than he is, although I found my voice in a way. But there was a time in my previous firm where the same leader who said I was a bad leader, which he was right about, I think he saw that about me, that I had this maybe not wrong, but just a different perspective of sales.
Mm-hmm.
He pretty much just said to me, you've got to find your own thing. You've got to find your own way, your own voice of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And he's absolutely right. Anyone can be a salesman as long as they lean into who they are.
Mm-hmm.
If you try to be someone that you're not going to be successful in sales or really anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to stop trying to be this outgoing, gregarious guy.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's not me. I'll keep saying it again. It's not
Yeah.
me. It's not me. It's not me.
Some of that you would chalk
Yeah.
up to maturity, but
Sure.
but some of that you see with people that are well into their careers, right?
Yeah.
It's a trap,
Yes,
right? Where you
absolutely.
think that's okay. That's what I need to look like next
Yeah.
if I want to get to
Yeah.
that level. How has that influenced how you engage with your employees?
I think that I tried to give them some of that same thing, and I tried to see the strengths and weaknesses that they have that match them and their position, their strengths and weaknesses in speaking with customers or whoever.
Yeah.
Because the team has got to be not a bunch of me on it, because we're not going to succeed that way.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to have different strengths and skills that are going to support us and be successful. So we've got to find, if you have them take a personality trait, you've got to find the whole well-rounded team. And we got to lean into those strengths. And I tell them, if you're good at something, lean into that and do that thing.
Yeah.
I don't want you to be something else, because you're going to be a fabrication or a fake of something that I don't want you to be, and you're not going to be successful here or anywhere else.
Would you agree? So if a small business owner, small, medium, frankly large,
Yeah.
owns culture, that's probably one of the best things that leader can do
Yeah.
to create a healthy culture.
Yeah.
Right? Is to help people connect with the story that God's got for them,
Sure.
the identity that God's got for them. And you don't even need to preach to them to do that, right? To help them realize how God's made them and give them permission,
Yeah.
to bring that full person to the
Yeah.
table.
And that's powerful when your mission is not about money.
Yeah.
And your mission is not about, you should have some product in there. Like, you should have a mission that is like for us,
Mhm.
it's, we're going to build infrastructure that serves community and glorifies God. We put fiber optic cable in the ground. Like, does God care about that? Yeah, in fact, he does. And I think he put me here, and he put all of us there to just build this little piece of infrastructure that are going to serve people in many, many ways. I mean, people are going to see this podcast or hear this podcast because of fiber, because of telecommunications.
Right.
And there's so many ways in which this is applicable that God's going to use this to serve people and lead people to him.
You make me think of Jordan Rayner's book, The Sacredness of Secular Things. You know?
I haven't read it, but
It's really
I can
good.
sense where it goes.
And, what is the eternal value? So many Christian business leaders, I think they wrestle with, what is my calling? Is this just a means to an end for something bigger that God has?
Sure.
And Jordan kind of talks about the theology of we have the Great Commission, but there's the original commission that we're called to create, to subdue, to bring order to, and that has value, in and of itself. So I love that that's your perspective.
Yeah. And it's both. I mean, it is provision, and it is doing something that's unique in building the world. I mean, ultimately, we're providing an opportunity for people to put food on the table for their families and roofs over their house. So it is as simple also as like just providing that special provision for people, and while we get to do all this other cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's safe to say they're going to be better parents. They're going to be better neighbors, right? If at work, where they spend the majority of their waking hours, they feel a sense of purpose. They have ownership and so forth. I'm curious. I assume that you have both believers and unbelievers on your team.
Yes.
And so with a stated mission statement that includes to bring glory to God, how do you unpack that for the non-believers?
Yeah, it's you have to walk a fine line, I think, because there are laws in place where you can't discriminate against like people who don't believe the same way that you do. And I'm okay with that. But I also happen to own the business. I'm not publicly beholden to anyone. So I want to be, and this is my leadership style. My mentality is to just be transparently me and just unabashedly me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And that means sharing my faith, which is so critically important to me, and sharing my mission for why I created this business or why I'm even here. Yeah. I think if I were to just create this thing and have people to just think I'm doing it for the fame, the fortune, the money, whatever it is, I wouldn't be doing what God wants me to do.
Yeah.
He created the foundation for me to have this. So I think he wants me to speak about him, even to those who don't know about him. And it's that stone in their shoes.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's being true to yourself.
Yeah.
It's maybe a little bit one part accountability for you as well. And I assume then that you just hope that, hey, if an employee doesn't understand what that means, that they'll ask.
Yeah. They'll either ask or unfortunately self-select out, which I'm okay with either one, probably.
Yeah.
But, and for most people, maybe not most people, but for some people who don't relate to that, I at least want them to achieve excellence.
What I love about and was unexpected for me about these conversations is how God would use them actually, like how much I've learned and how much I feel like it's been beneficial for both parties. Your story reminds me, I want to be clear, I'm not at all suggesting you shouldn't be as bold as you're
Sure,
being to say
sure.
that at all. Like I celebrate that.
Yeah.
Um, so oftentimes, especially if you feel like that's what's on your heart, God's calling you to be that bold. Um, whether it's scripture on your website, whatever it is, like that, core values, um, how we do that, how we unpack
Yep.
that, is our witness, is our testimony. And I think of a conversation I had with a member of my team after I had exited, and I was finally parting ways with the company that had acquired us. And she was awesome. She was a rock star. I knew she wasn't a believer.
Yeah.
I just loved her and
Yeah,
loved
yeah.
working with her. And at a certain point, I was describing to her the work that I was entering into. And with great passion, I used a term that just fires me up called redemptive entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And I did not realize until I saw her face in that moment that the word redemptive for some, especially those that are not followers of Christ, actually has a negative connotation. It didn't sit right. And it probably didn't sit right for all the right reasons. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And so, but it really made me think not to be more careful, right? But hey, go there.
Yeah.
If I sense, so I'm thinking about in the case of a business like yours, you have how many employees? 10? Is there anything you do in your onboarding to articulate your why
Yeah.
so it's not misunderstood?
We have not onboarded someone since unveiling this mission and vision for the team.
Okay.
So I am still thinking about this. But I do want that to be part of what we are portraying to the world, because I want the right people to work for us. They don't have to be Christians. They don't have to follow God or any God. I'm not going to differentiate that way. But I want them to have the character and the values that I feel that God wants from us: integrity, excellence, love for one another, just quality work, and that ownership mentality. And I think Christians, many of them, they can take on that mantle a little bit more than maybe someone who isn't. And even if someone who is an outsider comes on board and they come in and they're aware of what our mentality is, I think that they can still work with us and not be a Christian.
Yeah.
And I think we can be both.
I think one of the wonderful things, so I started my C12 practice the month before the lockdown, the shutdown. And one of the wonderful things in my experience that came from COVID, with all respect for all the negative side, is that we as Christians, but business people in general, started taking core values seriously.
Yeah.
Not just as something we hang on the wall, but something that we should really use in terms of how we hire and fire. And so I think in terms of how Christians lead in business, it is a wonderful way to open a door to the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah.
How does that play out? How do you, it sounds like some of this is fresh or was refreshed.
Yeah.
How do you plan on living the core values and mission in a way that maybe your unbelievers will absorb?
Right. We have a vision statement of 6 statements, and they all start with the word let's. So it's let us. And it's that promoting that team mentality, not only internally, but also our external vendors, customers, any shareholder or stakeholder that's out there. We want to include them in the process. And it's let's communicate, let's partner, let's add value, let's move fast. I think that was 4 or 5 of them. And then let's go. So like that's our final capstone. Let's go. We've got to take all those on and let's move forward. And everyone, whether you're a Christian or not, I kind of bake into them some Bible verses that I felt kind of led into that vision component.
Right on.
But also, like, let's just be real here. Let's communicate with our customers. You can do that, whether you have faith or not.
Yeah.
Let's go fast. You can do that. Let's add value. We're doing this not just for us. We want to add value for our customers as well. And it's a It's a godly component, but it's also a worldly or secular component to do that. You have
Yeah.
investors, shareholders, stakeholders who expect value, not only at BUCS Engineering, but at AWS or Comcast or whoever our customers are. They want value added. And I think profit in a biblical worldview, that's okay. We should have profit.
Biblical. There's some stories about that, right? I will say one of the things that is funniest to me when I hear a Christian business leader who is walking as boldly as you are and doing these things. I know this isn't an epiphany for you, but when the Christian business leader has this epiphany that, doing business in a kingdom-oriented way, in a biblical way, the way that God speaks about in His Word, that's actually a good way to do business.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Amazon would appreciate that.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
If we're doing it right.
Yeah. Run the race so that you win.
Yeah.
And that means a lot of things. It means training hard, training well. And when you're running a race, you've got competition. So I think you're actually treating your competition well by trying to beat them. So you've got to constantly evolve and get better. You've got to beat them on many things, worldly and not. So I think that mentality is really how I view the business. And because it kind of gets to some of my competitive nature.
Yeah.
And that's the way that I can in this day and age compete. And I think I'm doing it in a godly way, which is just trying to get better, man. We got to train hard, but at the end of the day, we've got to race that person, that company next to us.
Yeah.
And I don't know, God wants you to win. Run it so you win.
Well, and to the made for more. Like there's so much more untapped potential. Can I share with you my twists from a competition standpoint? So in my last chapter, I led an innovation domain, and we had some emerging, well-funded competitors breathing down our neck.
Yeah.
And so even, as a profitable company, we never felt like we had enough. And we would fall trapped to sometimes looking at our competitors and, we're not sizing up to them. And I mashed together just my heart that competition is good, which I'm hearing from you, with a little Peter Thiel, and that is that competition is for losers. And that's just my personal experience and conviction that if we're doing our job well, if we're really pushing up, we should be so differentiated, like we're not worried about it.
Yeah.
I
agree.
And that could be in our core values. That could be how we deliver. God gives us an amazing palette, along those lines. And frankly, it's the fun part, but so that's very cool. So what's your day-to-day life like in leading in your business? Are you very much in the trenches? Obviously, you're an engineer, or are you able to come up and work on the business?
Yeah, I try to do a lot of both. Unfortunately, I do think I get sucked back into the day-to-day operations too much, partially because I like it, and partially because I have to be. In an engineering business, there's a professional engineer who has responsible charge over the technical nature of what you produce. So I've got to be involved in a certain extent, unless I were to hire out, which I just financially we're just not there yet, which is okay. But going back to what we spoke about earlier, I do love the big picture items and the vision items that we've come up with, and I love working on those. AI is really cool. The software that we've built to support our customers is really cool. And I'm trying to intermingle just all of our softwares together, and that draws a lot of my attention because it's really fun. And I think it's a game changer for us. I think that's what's going to set us apart and allow us to punch above our weight class.
Sounds like that software is value add.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you speak to what that does?
Yeah. Early on in my career, I was victim to this too, and the software tools may or may not have existed, but you track your projects and many people track them with Excel spreadsheets. And it's just like project, and then all your columns had your important dates and information, and that's it. It was just a dumb way of doing things. Not like dumb, but just it was a dummy way to do things.
Yeah.
You're not providing anything for your customers.
Intelligence. Yeah.
No intelligence yet into the thing. And at one stop in my prior career, we were trying to develop a software called Site Tracker, which was specific to telecommunications, and I got some exposure and taste into how a single source of truth was really important, some of the cool things that you can do with it, but also how difficult it is to deploy software. It's really hard.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have different ways of doing things. And coming into my current firm, when I started, I knew that having software was going to be a key differentiator for us to allow our customers to have that single source of truth, to see insights into their projects, and to have, just that exposure at hand.
Yeah.
Not waiting for me to send them an update via spreadsheet or email. It's just not going to work. So we've spent probably 2 years getting ahead of the game and developing software that allows us to track our projects, pull data, and really give insights to our customers, our key customers who are Fortune 500 firms, who are hyperscalers, who love this stuff.
Uh-huh.
Love it.
I would imagine at the speed, if a lot of your work revolves around these data centers, that they would really appreciate that. So is this like Microsoft Project Planner on steroids with different connectors?
Yeah, we actually use a low-code, no-code software called Smart Suite, and we're building, I guess, our business logic into that, tracking the things that are important to us, and creating a lot of automations from it that are just really time savers, cost savers, and just more accurate and better. They reduce the human error.
Yeah, right on. So do you actually have engineers?
We do.
Yeah.
We outsource the engineering part.
I know you're an engineering firm. I meant software
yes,
engineering.
Correct. Yes, I understand. We outsource the software engineering part, but we manage it and lead it to make sure that they have our business knowledge and logic and direct us the right way.
So what do you think God's doing with BUCS? What do you think God would have?
I
that seems like that would allow you to scale.
Yeah, and I hope that it does. What God has planned for BUCS is that the BUCS leader needs to get out of the way. I'm becoming the bottleneck far too often, and I need to trust my team more. I need to have that next leadership crucible, I think is the way I'm feeling now. I think that is needed in my own personal and professional development and the business's development. And this is kind of the inflection point that I think that we're at right now.
What's the complementary role that's going to allow you to do that?
I'm not very good at operations.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not very good at operations.
Yeah.
And I also think that we need some more, I guess it's called street credibility. We're still a young business. I'm still kind of a younger guy. So I think many of these companies, they trust the companies who've been at it for a long time. So I think some street cred might help us to get a little bit more in terms of the business development side, which I also think we need. So operations and business development, I think would really help us.
Yeah. And are you doing work regionally, nationally?
We're primarily mid-Atlantic right now, but we're expanding our reach a little bit into Florida and Texas.
Yep.
Atlanta is also becoming a hotbed for data center development and hyperscalers. So we're heading that direction as well.
So at the point that you have someone with some operations chops and experience there, how are you going to need to elevate your leadership to keep having the impact God would have you have?
Yeah. I think I need to lean into the visionary part of me that is going to keep us ahead of the game. The things that I see for the way that we can implement AI with our tools, I mean, we got to win, and we're going to win that. We're going to win that against our competitors. We have to. There's no other way around it. And I need that time to be able to dedicate to setting that vision and to thinking about those ideas. So I need that operations person to take that off of me.
Yeah. Are you familiar with EOS?
Yes.
Yeah.
The traction guy.
The traction guy.
Yes.
Yeah, Gino Wickman. I would just encourage you. I'm a big believer in one of the core principles there, and it's that visionary integrator role.
Okay.
How even Disney had a counterpart in his brother, right? And usually it's somebody that is an operations kind of mindset and wiring, you know. But there are some key attributes to that role that really decide whether that person is truly going to complement you.
Yep.
And this was big in my story, and a lot of the people I work with are self-implementing or bringing on professional implementers. I help a lot of them get started, but I think that integrator role is key. Not just that they're a good operations person, and you won't find this in Gino's book, as I recall. I'm not a purist, EOS purist, but it's man, they need to be somebody you can really trust and that has a real heart and passion for your vision. After that, do they need to be able to break stuff down, execute, run with it, advance the ball? For sure. But they need to be somebody that you can trust, that they get that vision, they know how you're wired, they respect and love that, you know. And man, when you get that, it just really lights things on fire for you.
And that's probably something I need to work on too, which is just like identifying talent and identifying who that person is, because I think that can be really challenging for anyone, really. Just finding the right person and putting them in the right seat.
Yeah, good for you. How are you thinking about sales today? If you hire somebody into that role,
Yeah.
what are you looking for?
It's in our industry, there are a lot of player coaches with respect to sales.
Mm-hmm.
So many of our project managers are those folks who have the relationships with the folks who give out the work.
Yeah.
Being in the service industry, we're not really selling a product
Yeah.
in a sense.
Yep.
So I've seen the mentality of let's hire a sales business development person. We're just going to make phone calls. I've also dabbled in that with like LinkedIn and it hasn't worked.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't worked very well. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. This could be, but it just hasn't worked. So I really think I need to find those player coaches who are project managers, senior project managers, project engineers even, who have tabs on new customers, who have tabs on new markets, new geographies, and really just entice them to come over
Yeah.
and perform the work and win the work.
Yeah. Which usually is a team approach as well.
Sure.
Right? To
Sure.
sales. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
So what's next?
Because we are in the telecom world, there's a couple avenues we can take this. We can get into construction and we can get into fiber ownership.
Mm-hmm.
So those are two things that I'm thinking about. And also within the engineering world, can we get into land development? Can we get into other utilities like power and natural gas? So those are natural, easy avenues to go.
Yeah.
We've got great customers on the engineering side that we can hopefully maybe push them into construction and we can get some of that work. We also have the engineering chops to be able to design and place utilities in the public right of way.
Yeah.
So why not do it with water, sewer, gas, storm drain?
Yeah.
Work with the local governments. So there's a lot of ways that we can take this.
So you're in many ways a classic visionary, lots of opportunities. How do you distinguish between opportunities and obedience?
That is something where I think God has opened the doors and I just walk through them. Not to say that he will always treat me that way, but he's dragging me along, just like with the failure that I've seen. I didn't know that this door would open, but I'm a risk taker.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he knows that about me. And I think when the opportunity comes, he knows maybe that I'm going to take it because I have that mentality about me.
Mm-hmm.
So often he will present the opportunities and I take them.
Yeah.
Could be wrong about it, but it's worked out so far.
Tell me if this is inaccurate, but I sense based on what you've said and the way you're talking there, abiding is key.
Yeah.
So if somebody's listening and they're not actively abiding, if they don't have any sort of spiritual disciplines going in their life, if they're not in close relationship, then that could sound like, well, the door was open, so I walked through it.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. You might just fall out the window.
You're not saying that,
No,
right?
no.
So you're staying close to the vine enough to know when you see an open door, and also being a risk taker, I'm going to take that step into the Red Sea.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And see what God has.
And I've learned from looking back on my journey that nothing is coincidental. God took me through those steps because he had that bigger plan for the business for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I could just see things playing out, like with software, like fixing our costs. Like I could just see how the struggles that I had endured were now kind of coming to fruition. And I was seeing them in front of me like, okay, this is exactly why I went through that because of this right here.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my litmus test, I guess, for if God's working or not.
Good for you for being in the season that you're in and being able to reflect productively like that, because I know it's really busy. So thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this. I feel like there's so much more to talk about. I've already thought of probably like a half dozen resources that I want to connect you with.
Open to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask in closing, if somebody's listening on Spotify or YouTube, and when they close that player down, what do you hope they take from this conversation?
I think it's most important for you to be yourself. Be yourself and follow Jesus in truth. And he's going to lead you where you want to go. He knows you. He knows your heart. He knows your mind. He knows who you are. He knows your whole plan for your life. And as long as you love him, you're in good hands because he's going to walk you through it.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. It truly sounds like you walk in partnership. Is that fair to say?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, Greg, thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you.